she would go so far from me. Since I was 9 years old. That was Misty. That's the Boogie Woogie. It's the kind of music I used to play on my first job. I played in a house of ill repute. I think I'm bragging when I tell you this, but people used to stop what they were doing to listen.
I once played a party for President Ford. I know that sounds unlikely, but it's true. There's an account of it on the bulletin board over there with a couple of pictures. After the entertainment was over, President Ford took me aside and left me there. Story of my life. I went into this men's store. I said, I'd like to see something in a cheap suit. Guy said, the mirror's right over there. How do you like this jacket? It was a surprise from my wife. I came home one night and there it was on the back of a chair. Trousers got away. My Uncle Nosmo, I have an Uncle Nosmo King. You've probably seen this name around, Nosmo King. Moving right along. Uncle Nosmo has a motorcycle jacket, and on the back of it it says, if you can read this, my wife fell off. I dreamed I died and went to heaven, and St. Peter said, all the men who dominate their wives get in that line. All the men whose wives dominate them get in that line. I got in that line. He came over and said, do you dominate your wife? I said, no. What are you doing in this line? I said, my wife told me to get in this line. You know, I know that a lot of people think I'm stupid, but I recently finished a jigsaw puzzle and it took only 2 weeks. And on the box it said 4 to 7. When I was just a little boy, I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? Here's what she said to me. No. Dr. Smith speaking. Hi, Doc. This is Paul Anderson. I'm the one whose daughter has the scarlet fever. How's she getting along, Paul? She's getting along okay. We figured out where she got it. She got it from the babysitter. The babysitter has it. Well, then you better not have any contact with the babysitter then, Paul, because it's contagious, you know. Too late, Doc. I already slept with the babysitter. Well, then you better not have any contact with your wife then, because it's contagious, you know. Too late, Doc. I already slept with my wife, too. Geez, now we'll all get it.
Love's old flame is the same as the day I changed your name. When your old wedding ring was new. When your old wedding ring was new.
Dr. Smith speaking. Hi, Doc. It's Rock King. Have my lab reports come back yet? Yes, Rock, you've got hags. Hags? H-A-G-S? What's that, Doc? Herpes, AIDS, gonorrhea, and syphilis. What are you going to do, Doc? I'm going to put you in a hospital and feed you flounder and pancakes. Maybe a little pizza. Why that particular diet, Doc? It's the only thing we can slide under the door.
This guy went to the doctor. He had asparagus in his nose, asparagus sticking out of his nose, a carrot sticking out of one ear, a pickle sticking out of the other ear. And he said, Doc, I haven't been feeling very well. I'm weak and I don't feel well. The doctor studied him for a minute and he said, it's apparent to me you're not eating properly.
Now, our imitation of a lighthouse. That's all the turns I can make. I'm like Nancy Kerrigan. Imitation of Roy Rogers and Trigger. Ladies and gentlemen, my horse Trigger is some smart horse. Y'all folks want to see a smart horse? Trigger boy, come on boy, show the folks how you can add up things. Like what is 2 and 2? Come on, boy.
The Bassets get their assets and the Beaches get their Bassets, so a Basset is an asset in the end. Oh, the sons of Beaches always marry Bassets, for a Basset is a Basset to the end. Oh, the Beaches have the assets and the Bassets have the classes. Beaches assets keep the Bassets on the men. 2, 3, kick for the sons of Beaches always marry Bassets. The old Bassets find it hard to condescend. But the Bassets get their assets and the Beaches get their Bassets, so a Basset is an asset in the end. Are you from Boston? A Basset is an asset in the end. The end.
Excuse me. I want to find out how much time it takes to fly from JFK Airport in New York City to Leonardo da Vinci Airport in Rome. The airline representative said, just a minute. Thank you. See if your cigarette is named. Now, one bright, cool, alpine select evening at the Ritz Capri in Salem, when Lord Winston, Lord York, Lord Marlborough, Lord Bronson, Lord Berkeley, Lord Carleton, Lord Montclair, Lords Benson and Hedges, the viceroys of Bristol and Cambridge, the monarch, and all the other players of heritage, with all the regents of Kent, were in Parliament. Fatima Spud, just for a change of tempo, just for a lark, or more for a sterling vantage.
took off our old gold and silver thin spring satin dress and walked pell-mell down Chesterfield Avenue. Within 9 months, she doesn't merit looking like a camel. It'll only be a lucky strike. True.
In the news today, the guy who invented the hokey pokey died. And they had a tough time getting him in the coffin. They put the left foot in, they put the right foot out. And finally shake it all about. When I die, I want to die sleeping like my grandfather. Not screaming in terror like the passengers in his car.
I'm sorry, we get a lot of intellectuals in here. We gotta lay that stuff on them, you know. I'm not an intellectual myself. I mean, they ask me, does the name Pavlov ring a bell? I thought Magnum PI was a line from Caesar. I thought it meant I gotta go to the John in a big way. Nacho cheese. This doesn't belong to you. Nacho cheese.
My grandfather turned 96. His friends sent him over a hooker to his house. And she arrived at his house, at his door, with nothing on but a fur coat. That's all she had on. And he opened the front door, and she opened her coat and said, "Super sex." He said, I better take the soup.
There were these two little snakes, and they were hissing around in their pit, and their mother hissed out the window, "Hey, little snakes, what are you doing hissing around in my pit? Go hissing over to Mrs. Potts' pit if you want to hiss around." So they went hissing over to Mrs. Potts' pit, and they were hissing around in Mrs. Potts' pit, and Mrs. Pot hissed out the window, "Hey, little snakes, what are you doing hissing around in my pit? Go hissing over to your own pit if you want to hiss around." So they went hissing back to their own pit, and they were hissing around in their own pit, and the mother hissed out the window, "Hey, little snakes, what are you doing hissing around in my pit? I thought I told you go hissing over to Mrs. Potts' pit if you want to hiss around." They said, "We went hissing over to Mrs. Potts' pit, and we were hissing around in Mrs. Potts' pit, and Mrs. Pot hissed out the window, 'Hey, little snakes, what are you doing hissing around in my pit? Go hissing over to your own pit if you want to hiss around.'" So we came hissing back to our own pit, and their mother said, "Why? I knew Mrs. Pot when she didn't have a pit to hiss in."
When your hair turns to silver, I'll still call you Delta Flower. Pretty blonde, I'll still love you. I'll love you forever, and I promise I'll always be true. Oh, ho, ho. Ah, ha, ha.
This date, 5 years ago, 2 abortion bills were put on President Clinton's desk, and he paid them both.
In the last election, Bush ran against Gore. It came out during the campaign that Bush was against. He wanted less blood and guts on television, and Al Gore wanted less frontal nudity. In other words, Bush wanted less Gore, and Gore wanted less Bush.
God gave politicians one more brain cell than horses. So during parades, they wouldn't pee on the street. This guy bought a horse in an auction. The auctioneer said, "You got the best horse here." A lot of people didn't bid on him because they were uneasy about his background. He was raised in a monastery, and for their own particular purposes, the monks taught him their own particular commands. To get him going, you don't say, "Giddy up," you say, "Jesus Christ." You stop him, you don't say, "Whoa," you say, "Amen." The guy said, "Well, that's simple enough. He looks like a good horse." He said, "He certainly is. It's by far the best horse here. You've got something." I put a saddle on him. He said, "How do you get him started?" And I said, "You say, 'Jesus Christ.'" And I said, "Jesus Christ," and he takes off. Boy, does he go. He jumps over hedges and ditches and fences. He is a winged steed. And the guy is delighted. Finally, he's had enough. He says, "Whoa." He said, "No, wait a minute. It's something religious. Bingo." Well, that didn't work either. Now he's headed for a precipitous cliff. He's going to go off and lose his life. So he utters a little prayer to commit his soul to heaven. And he says, "Amen." And the horse stops right at the edge of the cliff. The guy looks over the edge of the cliff. He says, "Jesus Christ." I don't know whether you know it or not, but I did a show on Broadway, and I was arrested for indecent exposure. Policeman said, "What are you doing wandering around Times Square naked?" I said, I was in a cocktail party in Greenwich, Connecticut, and the hostess said, "After the next drink, we're gonna turn off the lights, take off our clothes, and go to town. I must be the first one here." I had a physical examination the other day at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the doctor had his clipboard out to ask you all the questions that they ask you to ascertain your condition. And he said, "Do you drink?" I said, "Well, it's a little early, but I'll have a scotch and soda." I like to drink daiquiris. They've got lemon juice, sugar, and rum. Lemon juice gives you strength, sugar gives you energy, rum gives you ideas of what to do with your strength and energy. I feel sorry for people who don't drink. When they wake up the next morning, that's as good as they're going to feel all day. I woke up the other morning and the clock said 1:65. It took me about 10 minutes to get oriented, but I finally realized I had passed out on the scale. Say you'll share with me one love, one lifetime. Say the word.
I will carry you. Share each day with me, each night, each morning. Anywhere you go, let me go too. Love me, that's all I ask of you.
She had on a long Gatton sound, a necklace of poobies and whirls, and on her feet were two tiny sass blippers. And the futile Barry said, "Now you may bow to the gall, but you must be mown by hidden eye." Cinderella said, "Okay," and she was off. And soon she cast to the camel. That's king to the castle. Oh. And the first poo people she saw were the two sissy ugglers. And she was so beautiful they didn't even cinderize Reckignella. And they introduced her to the prance and hens. And he said, "May I dab this hands?" He said, "Your boob's absolutely beautiful." He said, "You're even lovelier than beeping Slooty." And he was just about to ask for her mare in handage when suddenly the Strock clarted the trike swelled and Cinderella banned from the raw. But as she did, one of the sass blippers flipped from her soot. And the prance and hints picked it up, and he said, "If I can find a woman whose soot this flipper sits, I'll know with whom I'm walling in fun." And so the next morning he went from house to house. You can't turn that around.
You're a man.